the lecture will be recorded. So we're starting with overview of management. That will be our very first lecture that we're going to look at. The program that you've offered to take is MBA management. And it is very, very important that you get the basics right as far as management is concerned. Okay, so lecture 1 provides us with overall view of the concept of management. And that will be our focus today or this morning. All right. So we'll be looking at the meaning or the definition of management, identifying management levels and functions, evaluating managers' many roles, describing different management skills, and identifying the characteristics of management. All of this will make up what we term the overview of management. All right. So for our introduction, it is important for us to know that successful departments and organizations do not happen. They are managed to be what they are. What it means is that for every organization and every department, they will need somebody to be in charge of these organizations and department to perform the functions of management if they want the departments and organizations to be successful. Okay, successful organizations don't just happen by chance. There's normally management behind the success of every organization and department. All right. Management is required in all types of organizations at all levels and in all functional areas. What it means is that management cuts across. Whether you are into oil and gas, you are into hospitality industry, you are into education, all manner of organizations will require somebody or the role performed by a manager. So the functions of management are required in all types of organizations. Then they are also required at all levels. Very soon we'll be looking at the levels of organization. All right, but just to say that there are 3 major levels. We have the top, we have the middle, then we have the lower. At all of these levels, the functions of management are being performed. The only difference is that the degree and the extent will vary depending upon the level of management. Okay, so management is required at all levels and in all functional areas. So if you are either a marketing manager, a production manager, an account or finance person, you will still be performing the roles or the functions of management. So management cuts across disciplines, cuts across levels, cuts across several functional areas of a business or an organization. All right. So in our bid to understand the concept of management, it is important for us to know the various dimensions, the various angles or perspective that management has been viewed from. Okay, so the early scholars had their own perspective. If you say management, what do they mean? They place different emphasis to different areas as far as the operations of a business is concerned. Okay, so the very early scholars laid emphasis on what is known as productivity orientation. So to them, if you want to define management, management primarily should concern itself with increased productivity. That should be the main goal of management. And if you are managing, what it means is that you have to help your organization to be able to increase its productivity. All right. Later on, we had other scholars, and they sought to define management from the perspective of what is known as the human relations orientation. So the first one is productivity orientation. They are just after productivity. Others came and said, no, it is not just about productivity. You need to be concerned about people and how you relate with them in your organization. So human relationship and treating people well was the focus based on the human relations orientation of management. All right. Then we had the third crop of scholars that sought to lay more emphasis on decision making. So if you were to ask those group of scholars what management was, they will tell you management is that role when you occupy your responsibility. Generally or most of the time will require that you take decisions or you make decisions in the organization. So we have what is known as the decision-making orientation as far as the dimensions of management is concerned. Okay, then we had other sets of scholars that saw management from leadership perspective. So the manager basically is the person who is supposed to lead the activities of the organization. Okay, but in the course of our discussions, we may come to note the difference between leadership and management. Very similar, but they are not the same. So this crop of scholars viewed management to be all about leadership. If you claim to be a manager, you must have the ability and the capacity to lead other people in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. Then the last group of scholars sought to define management from the perspective of a process. Okay, so they said management is about taking some activities, but these activities can be seen as a process. You start with step 1 or process 1, then you move to process 2 to 3 to 4, and so on and so forth. So they saw management as a process that you need to go through in order to achieve certain objectives of the organization. Okay, so this makes up the dimensions of management. If you talk about management, depend upon whose eye you're looking at it. Some scholars viewed it from the perspective of productivity. If you can increase productivity in an organization, then you are a good manager. Others saw management from the perspective of human relations. Okay, if you can communicate well, relate well with your subordinates and people in your organization to help them to achieve some targets and goals, then you are a good manager. So the emphasis is on relationship, how you relate with people in the organization. Then others saw management from the perspective of decision making. As a manager, you must have the capacity to make decisions. Once you are a good decision maker, then you are a good manager. Okay. Then other scholars viewed it from the perspective of leadership. If you have the capacity to lead well, then you can be seen as a good manager. Then the last group viewed management as a process orientation, all right, that the activities are a process. So if we were to take into consideration all of these perspectives or dimensions of management, then what then is management? Okay, how can we get an all-inclusive and all-purposive definition for the concept of management? So management can now be defined as the optimization of constraining resources to achieve intended goals. Okay, it looks big, but there are certain keywords that we have to pay attention to. So it is the optimization, things that you do to optimize, to increase the value of, to increase the output of something, okay, of constraining resources to achieve intended goals. The resources that the organization tend to have, be it financial, be it human, be it fiscal resources, they are not many, they are limited, they are finite. Okay, so you need a system in place. You need somebody to play some role to pull together these resources in such a way that they will give the best resource as much as you can from the limited resources available to the organization. Okay, so that is the idea of optimization of constraining resources. Okay, so most of you are ladies, you understand this better. Most of the time, if you want to cook and you don't have enough at home, most of you are very, very creative and innovative to be able to combine some minimum stuff at home and help your family to get a meal, okay, out of the limited resources that you have at home. So that is the idea of management. The resources available will not always be enough for the organization, be it financial, be it human resources. But whatever it is that you have, You want to optimize. You want to make the best use of whatever is available in order to achieve the intended goals of an organization within the context of the organizational setting. All right. So, and the optimization process will lead us to certain functions that managers are expected to be playing. It will lead us to certain skills that you must have as a manager. It will lead us to certain roles that as a manager you have to play, all in your quest to optimize the constraining resources in an organization in order to achieve the goals of the organization. Okay, but this is not the only key definition of management. All right, so other scholars define management as working through and with people in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. So you are working through people. What it means is that as a manager, you need to be able to know how to relate, motivate, supervise, coordinate other people in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. And with people means that as a manager, because you are called the manager doesn't mean you should always be sitting at your office, okay? Your subordinates must have the impression that you are with them as far as the assignments or the activities of the organization is concerned. So you have to know how to make them feel you are part of whatever is going on, but at the same time, you have to be able to encourage and motivate them, even in your absence, to get the work done. So as a manager, it is not expected that you should be doing the work all the time, but at the same time, you need not make your subordinates feel you don't really care about what is going on. So you need that tact to be able to work with people and also through people in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. All of that is about the optimizational ability, how well you can optimize the resources of the organization in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. All right. So that is that for the definition of management. If you have any question, as I indicated, you can go to the reaction button and let me know. Otherwise, I'll move to our next sub issue, which is the levels of management. Okay, in the very introduction, I indicated that there are 3 major levels of management. So we have the top level, also known as the strategic level. We have the middle level, and we have the lower level. So for every organization that you find yourself, there is the higher tendency that you have these levels of organizations available. Okay. So what are they? So top level management. Managers at this level ensure that major performance objectives are established and accomplished. So at this level, what they do is to set or establish the performance objectives, and then make sure that the objectives are accomplished. They, on their own, don't go about actually working towards the attainment of the objectives. They just have to provide the direction as to the major objectives or goals of the organization. Okay, I hope that is clear. So managers at this level ensure that major performance objectives are established and accomplished. So they set the major objectives of the organization. These senior managers are considered executives responsible for the performance of an organization as a whole or one of its significant parts. So normally they'll be at the top, even though they are not responsible for the execution, day-to-day executional activities. At the end of the day, whether the company or the organization succeeds or not, it will be the top level management that will be held responsible. Okay, so the overall performance of the organization actually depends on these guys. Why that is the case is that if we looked at the other lower levels of management, their appointment will normally be made by the top level management. Okay, so if you appointed somebody to the middle level, appointed somebody to the lower level of management, you did your appointment. What it means is that you should have considered their abilities and their skills before appointing them. So if you did the appointment and the people are not performing well, and therefore the organization is failing, yes, you must be vicariously held liable for that poor performance because you did the appointment. Okay. Normally, I link it to football coaches. Whenever a football team is not doing well, and here I'm talking about the well-established leagues, right? Nobody actually talks about the players. Most of the time, if there will be somebody to be fired, it will be the coach of that particular club. Why is that the case? Because most times it is the coach who determines which players should be bought, which positions they should be playing, which tactics should be used in order to win a particular match. So when the team is not performing, ultimately, it is not about the players because you said you wanted such and such player. Okay, so that is the role that top level managers play. They are the helms of affairs. And if the organization is not performing well, they can be held liable or dismissed as a result. They have to set the vision, the overall mission, the goals, and the objectives of the organization. All right. That moves us to the middle level management. So middle managers report to top managers and are in charge of relatively large departments or divisions consisting of several smaller units. So we've seen the top. Normally they will be called the top CEO, COO. Those big boys are the top and girls are the top, right? Then we have those at the middle that will have to report to them. So they take instructions from the people at the top, then repackage that and send it to those at the middle, to those at the lower level, sorry. And if those at the lower level have complaints, they will normally come to middle level management to give them their concerns. And the middle level management will then go to the top level to talk about the concerns of people at the lower level. That's why they are called middle level. All right. They are in between the lower level management and the top level management. All right. So middle managers develop and implement action plans consistent with company objectives, such as increasing market presence. If you remember, when we're discussing top management, we said they set the company objectives. Within some context, we can add the vision of the company. So they determine the vision, they determine the long-term objectives of the organization. It is then up to, based on the objectives that have been determined, the middle level guys will then develop action plans that will help in the attainment of the company objectives. Okay, or if you want, the vision of the company. So we have an example here. If a company might have the goal of increasing its market share from, say, 10% to 20%. Market presence is basically market share. We want to be more available, more known in a particular market. The question is, top management has decided this year we want to increase our market share from 10% to 20%. Okay, the question then is, how will this be achieved? It will be the responsibility of the middle level management to come up with the action plans that will help the company to improve upon its market share from 10% to 20%. Okay, so examples of people at the middle level management include clinic directors in hospitals, deans in universities, divisional managers. So depending upon your organization, you can clearly see the guys that can be referred to as top level managers and those that will be referred to as the middle level management. Okay, the university system, as the example rightly indicated, most of the time the deans, and now for UCC, we also have the provost. So the two together makes up the middle level, where they will coordinate between the heads of department, and the top level will be, say, the vice chancellor, the pro-vice chancellor, and the registrar of the university. Okay, so the top will organize and to determine the strategy, the future that the university wants to go. It will be up to the deans to then develop plans and then hand over those plans to the heads of department, which we'll be looking at their level very soon, who will then ensure that whatever plans that the deans have developed will be executed in order to help the university to achieve its long-term objectives. All right. So the middle level, as their name suggests, they fall between the top level and the lower level. They pick on the objectives, the vision that has been set by the top level, try to develop action plans, and your guess will be, and I'm sure you can guess rightly, these action plans then will be sent to the lower level management to execute in order to achieve the objectives that the top guys set from the beginning. Okay. So the lower level management, the initial management job that most people attain is typically the first line management position, such as a team leader or supervisor, a person in charge of smaller work units composed of hands-on workers. So at the lower level, normally managers there are supposed to be dealing with hands-on workers. So if you are familiar with the university system, if you become the head of department, most of the time you still have to go and teach. You just have the additional responsibility to make sure that the lecturers in your department will also be doing the work that is required of them, i.e., they will go to class, they will assess students appropriately, and so on and so forth. So at the lower level, you are in charge of those that actually do the actual work, okay? The top guys, that is why it's called the strategic. They have to be thinking about the future of the organization, setting long-term objectives. The middle guys must be composing action plans. Then they'll pass it down to the lower level where the actual work is supposed to be done. So if you're at the lower level, the name supervisor is given. So you have to be there to supervise the operative employees to do things that they are supposed to do in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. Okay, so first line managers ensure that their work teams or unit meet performance objectives, such as producing a set number of items at a given quality that are consistent with the plans of middle and top management. Job titles for these line managers vary greatly, but such designations as department head, group leader, unit leader. Okay, so I think this should be clear. So you can see the link, all right? Top management deciding what we want to achieve, middle level coming out with the action plans, then giving it to the lower level to make sure that the operative employees or the employees that will be doing the actual work actually execute these plans in order to achieve the objectives that were set by top level management in the first place. All right. Okay, so that is that with the levels of management. Are there any questions before we move on to the functions of managers? Any questions on the levels of management? Okay, if there are no questions, we move to functions of managers or functions of management. All right, so managers just don't go out and haphazardly perform their responsibilities. Good managers discover how to master 4 basic functions. So there are 4 basic functions that if you call yourself a manager, you should be engaged with or in. The first is planning. You must have the capacity or the ability to plan. The second is organizing. The third is leading. And the fourth is controlling. Okay, these 4 are the 4 core functions of management. So there are several other things that, for example, you'll hear things like decision making. In one of the explanations, we spoke about the fact that some scholars saw decision making as one of the main functions of a manager. You may come across, say, communication. You may come across, say, supervision. What else? You may come across the word directing. There are several other functions that managers play beyond these four core, but these are deemed to be the four basic because any of the other functions, some way, somehow, can be factored into these four functions of management. Okay, so if you pick the examples that I gave earlier, if you pick, say, staffing can easily fall under organizing. And very soon you see the reason why. If you are organizing, you need resources, and part of the resources that you need will include staff. Okay, so staffing as a function of management can easily find its way under organizing. If you talk about words like directing, coordinating, decision-making, all of that will fall under leading or leadership. Okay, so all the other functions of management that you might have heard of can well find their whatever fit in one of these main functions of management. That is why they are considered to be the main functions of management: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And most of our lecture subsequently will be based on these core functions of management. Okay, but before we get to them as main chapters, let's look at basically what they are before we pick on them much later as major topics or chapters that we'll be looking at. So planning. This step involves mapping out exactly how to achieve a particular goal. Okay, but let me just add that part of planning, first and foremost, is even setting out the goal that you want to achieve as a manager. So part of planning is to set goals or objectives that you'll be seeking to achieve in your organization. The next point is to map out exactly how to achieve that particular goal. So it's very easy to say that we want to increase our sales revenue by 20%. We want to increase our market share by 25%. That is easy for anybody to say. But if you are engaged in proper planning, the most relevant question should be how. The how question should be the most important. How are we going to increase our market share from 10 to 25%, our sales revenue from 15 to 35%? Okay, so if you're engaged in planning, first you set goals. The second is to map out how to achieve that particular goal. All right. The next thing is that the manager first needs to decide which steps are necessary to accomplish that goal. These necessary steps are developed into a plan. So basically the how are the various steps that should be taken. You document all of the steps or decisions that must be made into what is known as a plan. Okay, so if you pick a typical plan, you should have the objective or the goal that you'll be seeking to achieve. The next thing you should have in a plan is the how, the steps or the procedures that you'll be following in order to achieve the goals or the target that you set for yourself. So for example, the organization's goal is to improve company sales. When the plan is in place, the manager can follow it to accomplish the goal of improving company sales. So before we proceed, any of you into sales, or if even you are not, what do you think a company can do to improve the sales, its sales? Yes, now I want responses from you guys. Akosia, I'm looking at the names here in a particular order, so Akosia is the first on my list. What should a company do to increase its sales?
So I think a company can increase its sales by having a maybe a competitive advantage over its competitors. So there's something about your product that your competitors don't have. So that will make customers want your product because it has an additional value that your competitors don't have.
Beautiful. But that is a theory or theoretical answer. I don't know how to explain. But when it comes to the how, there should be specific things. If we talk about the fact that the company must increase its competitive advantage, the question again is how. So with these strategies or tactics that a business must undertake, we want the specifics. What exactly should they be doing? Even with your answer, what should a company do to improve its competitive advantage? Agosi, I only want to come again.
Maybe if I want to increase my competitive advantage, I'll have to do a research to know what customers want that my other competitors don't have. So I'll add that value to my product to enhance
Beautiful.
it.
So specifically, if you want to increase your sales, probably the company needs to embark upon research to find out what their rivals are doing that they are not doing, right? Regina, your hand is up.
To me, maybe technological advancement also as well.
Specifically, what should the company do with technology? When you say technological advancement, it's quite big.
In terms of their production, maybe they are using a manual or other things. So they should acquire maybe technological equipment that will enhance them to improve their productivity, that will give a value to their customers against their competitors.
Okay, so the assumption is probably, once again, it's the quality issue. Maybe the technology that they are currently using is not good enough. So they may take a decision to get a good technology that will improve the quality of their products and services. All right. Evelyn. Evelyn, I can see your name. Yes. Okay. So basically, the how questions should be specific things that the company should be doing. All right. It could be, so we've spoken our research. And that is very key. You cannot really just jump into doing anything until you get to know what the problem is. Okay. So it could be that the company should undertake research to know exactly what they should be doing. All right. If they get to know, probably as Regina indicated, it might be due to the technology that is not really good, not up to date. And so they may take a decision to replace that with a better one. It may be their pricing, all right? So probably either they should reduce the price, depending upon the situation, or increase the price, depending upon the situation once again, all right? We have products that if you deal in and the price is low, you'll not get some category of people because they buy those products because of the prestige attached to it. Once the price is very low, the prestige factor goes away. And so nobody will buy, or those class of people won't buy. So it is not always the case that you need reduction in price, but that is just by the way. So in this, our example, when you decide that I want to increase my sales revenue by 30% or whatever percentage, that is easy to say. The important thing that I want us to notice that you must go ahead to list the hows, the things that you'll be doing as a manager in order to achieve those objectives. Okay, so that is that. So under planning, it encompasses two major things. First, you need to know the goal. And then second, you must know the hows or the things that you have to be doing to achieve that. All of that fall within the context of the fact that your goal or objectives need to be time bound, right? So it shouldn't be, otherwise it will just be a wish. And most of the time it could be annual if it is a short-term plan that you want. If it's a medium term, maybe 5 years, long term, say 10 years, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that is one major function. As I said, this is just intro. Okay, we'll be picking planning. Each of them is a major chapter that we have to learn because those are the core functions of a manager. And if you've taken your time, the whole course will be measuring on the functions of a manager, beside the theories that I'll be learning very soon. The others are the functions that a manager must be playing. All right. So after you've determined your goal or objectives and you've listed the kind of things you'll be doing, in other words, your strategies to be able to achieve that, the next logical step is to ask yourself the resources, what will you need in order to be able to achieve, first and foremost, undertake the activities that you said you'll be doing in your plan in order to achieve the objectives that you set in your plan as well. Okay, so determining the resources that you need, putting together these resources in a very harmonious manner in order to achieve your objectives fall under what is known as organizing. All right. So organizing involves determining, assembling, and arranging activities and resources for the plans and the coordination of these activities and resources into an appropriate structure to achieve organizational objectives. Okay, so from our understanding of a plan, planning will let you have an objective. Planning will let you state the things that you have to do in order to achieve those objectives. But you know that that is not enough. You need structures in place and you need resources in place in order to be able to do the things that you said you will do so as to achieve the goals or the objectives that you set in your plans. So the pulling together of the resources and putting in place the right structure in order to coordinate these resources to work together, okay, is what is known as organizing. I hope that is clear. And if you just have also resources without structure in place to harmonize and coordinate these resources, you will not be able to achieve your objectives. Most of the time, I ask you guys to just mentally see yourself in an organization where they have no structure in terms of an organizational structure in place. If you get to any organization, you will therefore just see some building somewhere. You may see people walking about. You may see some money in some bank account. But the only reason why all of these resources are able to coordinate and let the organization function as it is because we have what is known as organizing going on. Okay, there are structures that have been laid in order to utilize these resources to achieve the objectives of the organization. All right. So after a plan is in place, a manager needs to organize a team and materials according to a plan. Assigning work and granting authority are important elements of organizing. So we said we want to increase our sales. We've indicated we want to probably conduct research. We want to probably either improve the quality of our products. We want to either increase or minimize the price of our product. All of these things require work for them to be a reality. Okay, so after you've indicated what you want to do also or how to achieve your goals and objectives in your plan, that is not enough. You need to know the resources that you need. But beyond that, you need to know who would be doing what based on your plans in order to achieve your objectives. Okay, so you need to know who should be doing what activity, what type of authority should he have, who should he or she be accountable to, and so on and so forth. So those structures and systems that you put in place in order to ensure that the organization functions well and harmoniously is the role played by organizing. Okay, so manager must determine tasks, assign responsibilities, define authority and responsibility relationships so that there won't be chaos in the organization. People should know who their bosses are. and should also know who their subordinates are. Okay, who am I supposed to reporting to, and who is supposed to report to me? I should clearly know what I am supposed to do, the resources that should be made available to me, and the restrictions, my boundaries, what I cannot do in the organization. So you eliminate this unity, disorder, confusion in the organization once you have a proper structure in place and resources in place. This then will help you to be able to execute your strategies and therefore help you to be able to achieve the objectives that you said you wanted to achieve in your plans. Okay. Is it clear? Any question with the function organizing? If you have understood the planning, then organizing becomes the logical next step. Okay, getting the resources, forming authority, responsibility, relationship, assigning duties, and so on and so forth. And here, basically, just picture how organizational charts look like. Okay, that will help you to understand how the organizing function is done. In the midst of all that also is the fact that organizing entails getting the requisite resources that will be needed in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. All right. Then we come to the third function, major core function of management, which is leading. So we said first, we started with planning. Know what you want to achieve in terms of your goals or objectives. Know what you have to do in order to achieve that, the tactics, the strategies, the actions, plans that you need in place. That makes up our planning. The next step we said was that know the resources that you need. There could be financial, there could be human resource, there could be fiscal resources. And after you've gotten the resources, make sure that you have a structure and a system in place to make people accountable. People should know what they are supposed to do, what they are not supposed to do, and so on and so forth. Okay. But just having this will not be enough. If you have the structure, organizational charts or structure in place, people know their offices, they know their job description, what is expected of them, what is not expected of them. You need leadership to push all of these guys or the system to work as you want it to work in order to achieve your objective. Okay. So based on, I think we'll be learning something on motivation, but there is a scholar that came out with a theory that says theory X. All right. It assumes that people are naturally lazy. And for most of us, that is the case. Until we get somebody to push us and direct us. If we're to be left alone, we'll come to work and just come and chat, just come and watch or play video games and go back home. Okay, so the fact that you have the nice structure in place, you have the resources in place, it will not guarantee that at the end of the objectives of the organization will be achieved without leadership. Okay, so what then is leadership or leading? So leading involves motivating, communicating, guiding, and encouraging your employees or subordinates to give up their best in the attainment of the organizational goals or objectives. All right. So it is not enough to say we have a nice structure, we have all the resources there. I don't understand why we are not able to achieve our objectives. No. You need somebody else to act that role of a leader, to motivate, to cheer them on, to persuade them to give up their best to the organization. Okay, so it requires the manager to coach, to assist, and solve problems with employees. You have to be there to play all this role if you want to act as a good manager. Okay, so leading will then become the natural step after organizing as far as the function of a manager is concerned. So as a manager, you must have the capacity to lead. You must have the ability to be able to persuade, to encourage, to motivate others to give up their best to your organization. Right. Then we come to the final function, as far as the core functions of a manager is concerned, that is controlling. All right. So we began with planning. And at the planning stage, we said you should indicate the objective that you're seeking to achieve, the goals or the targets that you want to achieve. All right. And then you should also indicate the things that you should do in order to achieve that. Then we got to organizing. We said those earlier points will not be enough. You need to get the right resources, and the resources include human beings. Getting the resources will not be enough. Establish a proper structure and linkage to ensure that people don't just come and walk about. All right. If there is a structure in place, everybody will have something to do in order to help you to achieve your objectives. Then we go to leading, and we said having the structure and the resources is also still not enough. You must have somebody serving or acting the role of motivating these guys to work hard and give of their best. That is leading role. Okay. So the last step is to go back and check and see what you said you wanted to do, whether you've been able to achieve that. The first one will be to look at the objectives that you set under the plans. Were you able to achieve? We started with seeking to improve our sales by, say, 30% or whatever it is. It could have been profit. At the controlling stage, you want to go back and check your actual performance or results against that which you said you wanted to achieve. And what you said you wanted to achieve will normally be at the planning stage or the planning function of a manager. Okay, so controlling is going back to check whether whatever you said you wanted to do, whether you've been able to do them. And if there are any deviations, you ask yourself why. Okay, and then take corrective measures in order to prevent that from happening again. But even in instances where you've been able to achieve your objectives, based on the concept of continuous improvement, you still have to ask yourself, what can I do to even improve upon this standard better the next time around? Okay. Especially so if there have been changes in the environment of the business, whether the internal environment or the external environment of the business has changed, it is important to go back and recheck your tactics and your strategies, whether they will be efficient in the coming years. Okay, so yes, that's particular point. You'll learn more about that in strategic management. And here also, I think it should have been something that you should do under management, but for time's sake, we won't be able to cover all the topics, right? But whenever you achieve your objectives, don't just get overexcited. It is important to find out whether the assumptions that cause you to come up with certain strategies are still valid. Okay. I was coming to explain that most time that explains why when a team wins a league, okay, they win some championships, it's normally difficult for them to repeat it for some number of times, because all those guys who lost will go back now and be studying their tactics and strategies and then find ways to beat that particular team the next time around. So until the team goes back and rework their strategy, if they were to come up with the same formation and plan, they may not go far in the next seasons. Okay, so it's the same thing. If you achieve your objective as a business, it will still be important to go back to verify whether your environment has not changed. If it has not changed, then all things being equal, you can continue with the same tactics and do very well. Otherwise, you may have to rework those tactics, even though you've been able to achieve your objectives. All right. So let's note that all managers at all levels of every organization perform these functions. But the amount of time a manager spends on each one depends on both the level of management and the specific organization. Okay, so if you're a manager, you will by all means perform all these functions. You'll be planning, you'll be organizing, you'll be leading and controlling. But the magnitude of each depends upon the level you find yourself. Okay, So much earlier, we spoke about the levels. If you are at the top level, your basic responsibility most of the time will be at the planning stage. We've explained this, isn't it? You have to determine and set the long-term objectives for the organization. All right. That doesn't mean that if you're at the lower level, you'll not say plan, but your planning role will be quite minimal. Okay. It will be less minimal compared with the other functions, such as leading. All right. Guiding people, encouraging people, teaching them what they should do, and so on and so forth, because you are at the bottom to make sure that things are done. So you may be performing all of these roles, but the degree at which they are performed will vary depending upon the level as well as the type of organization that you find yourself. Okay, so for some organizations, the core thing that they do maybe say setting this, if you're into say consultancy and you are into strategic management, your vision or your role, your main vision of the organization may be determining long-term vision and direction for organizations. And so you are likely to be dealing with more of planning functions and issues than the other roles or functions of a management. Okay, but that doesn't mean that will only be the only thing you'll be doing. You will by all means be doing the other functions of management, but at any point in time, there will be one function that will be dominant because of the level or the type of organization you find yourself in. All right. Okay, any questions before we get into managerial roles or management roles? Any questions so far? So we've looked at the definition, and we are still under overview. We've looked at the definition of management. Even before the definition, we looked at the dimensions of management. Then we got to the definition of management. Then we just discussed the functions of management. And then we come into the managerial roles or management roles. Any questions with regards to what we've done up to the functions before we continue with the managerial roles? Okay. If you guys are quiet, that means you've understood the explanations up to this point. But I just want to caution that you pay attention to the role and functions, okay? If you confuse them during exams, you get wrong, whatever. You will have deviated. So the functions are different from roles. Even though in our everyday use, they are almost, what is the English word? Synonyms or something like that. Synonyms, right? Yes, but in their technical terms, explanation, they are not the same. Okay, so the functions are the things that a manager you are supposed to be doing. The roles are behaviors that we expect of you as a manager. Okay, so managerial role may be defined as the set of organized behaviors that are expected of a manager in performing his or her functions at each level of management. So in the course of performing your performing your functions of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, it is expected that you have certain behaviors, okay? And the behaviors are what have been classified or described as managerial role, okay? Henry Mansberg described a set of 10 rules that a manager fills. But this 10 can be divided into 3 major categories. We have interpersonal role, we have informational role, and we have decisional role. It should be easy for us to explain this because of the way they sound. Okay, so interpersonal, this role involves human interaction. So this behavior that is expected of you expects you to have a behavior that will make it easy for you to be able to interact with others. Informational role. This role involves the sharing and analyzing of information, all right? So when it comes to information, some behavior is expected of you, and that falls under informational role. Decisional role, this involves decision making. So the three major categorizations of the roles of a manager. But as we indicated, they have sub roles. That is why in all, they make up what is known as the 10 roles of a manager. So the interpersonal role is subdivided into three. We have first the figurehead. Okay, so as a manager, if you play the figurehead role, you perform ceremonial and symbolic duties, such as greeting visitors and signing legal documents. All right. So if you were, yes, say vice chancellor, that may sync with you guys easily. So if there are occasions like, say, which ones have you come so far? Matriculation. I'm sure have you come for your matriculation? Matriculation, university, have you been here for direct or not yet?
So it was online.
It was online, and that's okay.
Yes.
So you've had it, right?
Yes.
Yes. So matriculation, graduation, ceremonies, and there are other distance. Most of the time, you find a vice chancellor there. All right. If there is some event happening and they want University of Cape Coast to be there, you may not see me. But the vice, if it is about the university, unless of course I've been nominated by the vice chancellor to represent the university, the vice chancellor will normally be there. And once he's there, it's as if it's as the same as University of Cape Coast being there. Okay. When guests either within or outside of this country come to visit the university, yes, so the first call will be the vice chancellor's office and so on and so forth. Okay. If there is any form of agreement that is supposed to be reached with either internal or external partners, normally vice chancellor is supposed to sign on that particular document. Okay, so he acts that role known as the figurehead. He represents the university in most of these occasions, and that is one of the roles, the figurehead role, falling under interpersonal role. Okay, but it is not just, say, the vice chancellor or the CEO. If there's a departmental issue, okay, so the issue is about, say, the Department of Management, then obviously to be the head of that department that will be doing all of these things that we've spoken about. So if it is about your unit, you have to play the figurehead role. If it is about the entire organization, then the manager or the CEO or the vice chancellor, as I've indicated earlier, will normally play that particular role of the figurehead. Okay, right. And the interpersonal role also, the manager is supposed to play the role of a leader. All right, so pay attention. You see that leadership now falls both as a function and as a behavior. Okay, so under interpersonal role, you have the role of a leader as one of the roles that the manager is supposed to play. The explanation is the same. It's expected to have the behavior that directs and motivates subordinates, counsel and communicate with subordinates. So you are expected to put up that behavior as well. Then the last one under interpersonal roles is liaison. A manager must be serving as a liaison. What does that mean? Maintain information links both within and outside the organization via mail, phone calls, and meetings. So if you're a liaison, what it means is that you're liaising with people, both internal stakeholders and external stakeholders of the organization. That is one role that a manager is supposed to play. So these three fall under the interpersonal role of a manager. Then we have informational role. There, the manager is supposed to play the role of monitor. Monitor means to seek and receive information, scan periodicals and reports, maintain personal contact with stakeholders. So basically, the monitor role is where you scan the environment to search the environment to get as much information as possible in order to share with members of your organization. All right. So what your competitors are doing, their tactics, their next moves, the general information about the industry that you find yourself as a manager, you must be interested in that and be seeking for information in that regard. So when you go about seeking for such information and receiving such information, you're playing the role known as a monitor. Okay. So the next one comes naturally from the monitoring role. So the manager forwards information to organization members via memos, reports, and phone calls. All right. So if you get to know what is happening, you must disseminate this information to your subordinates or people within your organization, okay, for them to take advantage of whatever information you've got from the monitoring role. Okay, then we have the spokesperson role, transmits information to outsiders via reports, memos, and speeches. Okay, so spokesperson, this time around, you sending information now only outside to outsiders concerning the activities of the organization. It doesn't mean you are PR, but I gave an example of, say, a delegation coming to meet University of Cape Coast, or if it is a departmental level coming to meet the head of department. Most of the time, you'll be telling those delegations what your department has been doing this far, okay? So that role is what is known as a spokesperson. If there's the organization-wide, you want to explain what your organization has been doing so far, and so on and so forth. So a manager is supposed to also play the role of a spokesperson. Under the decisional rules, we have 4. So you must behave like an entrepreneur, okay? So you initiate improvement projects, identify new ideas, and delegate idea responsibility to others. So everything that entrepreneur is supposed to play, such as taking risks, coming out with new ideas, suggesting ways to improve the way of doing things in the organization, as a manager is expected of you, okay? And when you do that, you're playing the role known as an entrepreneur. It's part of your roles as a manager. Then you need disturbance handler role, okay? Disturbance handler is coming from the word disturbance. That means things are not going right, all right? So a manager is supposed to play the role of a disturbance handler. Means take corrective action during disputes or crisis, resolve conflicts among subordinates, adapt to environment. So it's coming from the word disturbance. When there's trouble, you have to take charge of it and find ways to resolve that particular problem that has come up. Okay. Then resource allocator. Yes, so as a manager, you may find yourself at some point sharing or distributing resources. You have to decide who gets what. Okay, so the managers decide who gets the resources, prepare budgets, set schedules, and determine priorities. So when you perform any of these roles, you're performing the role of a resource allocator. And at some point, the manager must act as a negotiator for his department or unit or organization. So here you represent your department during negotiations of union contracts, sales, purchases, and budgets. So whenever you find yourself at a spot where you have to argue for your organization, all right, in terms of the resources that should be coming to your unit, you're playing the role of a negotiator. And that is expected of you as a manager, all right? So this roles. The first one, interpersonal, there were 3. Figurehead, leader, liaison. Informational role, we had 3. Monitor, disseminator, spokesperson. That makes 6. If you come to decisional role, we have 4 sub-dimensions: entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, then negotiator. Okay, if you add the 4 to the 6, that gives us 10. Okay, so if we pick the dimensions in terms of the roles of a manager, we have 10 roles that a manager is supposed to be playing. Any questions so far before we move to skills, management skills or managerial skills? Any questions? Are we clear? At least I want 1 year or 2 years, then I can proceed.
Yes,
are we
sir.
fine?
Yeah. Yes, please.
Okay. Erica. Erica, are we okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will randomly be calling you guys to be sure you are still online. Most of you just connect and go and be doing your own thing, washing your stuffs. So just make sure you are online because I'll be calling. And if you are not there too, -10. You did not attend the class. Okay. So let's go to, I'm sure probably this will be the last aspect of this attributes of a manager or the things that a manager needs. So we move to management skills. So skills are specific abilities that results from knowledge, information, practice, and aptitude. So specific abilities that will come from either your knowledge, some information you've acquired over the period, some practice or aptitude that you have acquired. That makes up skills. Okay. Not everyone can be a manager. That is very, very important for us to note. Okay. As much as we might be excited being called a manager or holding those roles, you can just see earlier on from the functions to even the roles and examine yourself whether you can do those things. Okay. Before adding on to that, the skills required. Certain skills or abilities to translate knowledge into action that result in desired performance are required to help other employees become more productive. Okay, so let's look at them. There are 3 skills that are required. Some scholars actually have 4. They may have what is known as diagnostic skills, but once it's not here, we'll limit ourselves to these 3. So we have thinker skills, we have the human skills, and we have the conceptual skills. To be able to function well as a manager, you need these 3 skills. Okay, so what is thinker skills? This skill requires the ability to use a special proficiency or expertise to perform particular tasks. So this is the skill that you need to do what you've been employed to do or what you are supposed to do. Let me explain it further. So if you call yourself, say, a teacher, all right, your core duty should be to teach. And therefore, the thinker skills is the skills that you have as far as teaching is concerned. So you cannot say I'm a teacher, but I can teach, or I don't have the ability to teach. All right. The same goes for all the other roles. If you call yourself a doctor, what it means is that you have the capacity to diagnose, say, sicknesses and illness and give prescriptions as to what should go with that to deal with that particular sickness or problem. If you call yourself an accountant, there are basic things that you do or you should be capable of doing: keeping of financial records, preparing financial statements, engaging in financial analysis, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the abilities or competencies that are needed to be able to do that which you've been called to do or employed to do is what is known as the thinker skills. And as a manager, you will need this. Okay, we'll look at the levels. We'll connect this to the various levels of management, and you will get to know why these skills are very important. So managers acquire these skills initially through formal education and then further develop them through training and job experience. All right, so we've explained this. Thinker skills are most important at lower levels of management. Yes, so that was what I was trying to talk about. Okay, so we said at the lower level, you will be required to teach other people what they should do. The operative employees, you have to guide them, you have to coach them, you have to direct them as to what they should be doing. The question is, if you don't have or know how to do that particular activity yourself, how do you direct others to do that? Okay, so if you're head of departments and your duty at that level is that make sure that your teachers go to the classroom and teach, and if they go also, make sure that they teach very well. All right, that presupposes that you as the head knows what teaching well means. Okay, if you don't have the capacity to teach well, how do you teach or even coach your people in your department to teach well? Okay, that goes for any other job that you can think of. So at the lower level where you are supposed to guide subordinates or operative employees to do a particular task, it is expected that you should have the knowledge and the ability to do the task in the first place. Okay, and the skill or the ability to do that task is what is known as technical skills. So you don't think about going up the level if currently you've not developed proficiency in doing what is expected of you. And now I'm talking to you guys personally. You have to make sure that whatever you've been employed to do, you master that, because that's the first stage. It's only when you become very competent and outgrow your present level that promotion will naturally come. All right. Yes, there are other ways you may use to get promoted, but the natural one is that you should become very, very competent and overqualified for your current position. Then you open the door for the next level. Okay, so first and foremost, you have to be capable of doing that which you have been employed to do, and that is the technical skills. All right, then we have the human skills. These skills demonstrate the ability to work well in cooperation with others. All right, so at any point in time as a manager, this will come up. Your ability to relate and to work well with other people is one of the key requirements of a good manager. Okay, so a manager with good human skills has a high degree of self-awareness and a capacity to understand or empathize with the feelings of others. Very, very important. Okay, the only way people will get to respect and get persuaded by you is when they feel that you like them or you care about them. Okay, and you need empathy. You need to be able to feel what other people feel. Okay, when they are in trouble, you need to demonstrate that care in order to be able to lead them. So it's very, very important. So all of the things that are required to be able to relate well with your subordinates and your colleagues at the workplace is what is termed as the human skills. You have to have that. It's because it's an important requirement to be an effective manager. Okay. Then we have the conceptual skills. This skill calls for the ability to think analytically. As managers assume ever higher responsibilities in organizations, they must deal with more ambiguous problems that have long-term consequences. So as a manager, you must be able to analyze to find out the reasons or the causes for things that happen in your organization. Okay, or think about ways to solve the problems. But even before you think about the solutions, you must be able to analyze and find out the root causes of where problems are coming from. Okay, so for example, if your company was to perform abysmally in a particular year, profits were to drop from 30% to say 10% or 5%, which department will be responsible for that? And this is a question to the class. If there was a drop in profitability in your organization, which department will be held liable for that? Or will you hold liable for that? Albert Kojoafo. Albert Kojoafo.
Yes, sir.
Yes. If you're a manager in your organization, there was a drop in profitability, very abysmally, which department will you hold liable for that?
My sales and marketing team.
Why?
Yeah, because they they are solely supposed to be in charge.
They are solely
Of-
supposed to be in charge.
Yes,
Of
of our sales.
okay.
Yes.
Who else is here? Millicent. Millicent.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Are you sleeping or you are awake?
No, please. I'm not sleeping. I'm awake.
Okay. So which department? Or do you agree with what Albert was saying?
Yes, and I also add the HR department to Albert.
Why HR department?
Because at the end of the day, the staff not performing also boils down to the HR department. They see to the day-to-day of the human activities in the office. So the HR department, I'll add that one to it.
Okay. Anybody to add any department? Anybody who thinks another department can be liable?
Prof, I think is the production department is also part.
Is it the production department or they are also part? What answer are you giving?
The production department.
Are they solely responsible or they may be part of the problem?
They may be part of the problem because if the production is not, if production is having a problem, if the if they are not well produced, they will not get good sales.
Okay, so I'm sure you're talking about the quality of the product, isn't it?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. Anybody to add any other department that you think can be held liable? The rest of you've not paid school fees, sir. Tenny, have you paid your school fees? I am guy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, if you have paid your school fees, answer.
They've mentioned all.
They've mentioned all.
Yes, sir.
Evelyn, any other thing that you think we should add?
No, sir.
No?
I was about mentioning HR, but I think Millicent has said it already, so.
Okay. Fozia?
Yeah, my network was messing up, so I didn't hear what you said.
Okay, then that's fine. We'll continue. Okay, so you can see from this example, all right, what we mean by analytical skills. Albert started with just solely the sales and marketing. And that is normally the response I get, okay, when I ask this question. Why? Because there will normally be the final stage of the value chain responsible for selling and probably after sales support. So whenever the profits are declining or we are not making much profit, we have the tendency to hold them liable. Okay, but if you were to be more analytical, then it would be wrong to just jump to the conclusion that it is as a result of the marketing or sales department. Okay, it could be coming from any of the other departments as we have seen in other answers. It may have even started from your supply chain. Okay, your supply chain. And what I mean by supply chain is that it may be coming from the people that bought your raw materials that you were using in the organization. They probably didn't negotiate for good prices, or they bought poor quality raw materials. And that then will feed into say probably is the production, because production probably wasted a lot of raw materials in the cost of the production, or the technology there and the equipment there are outmoded, and so they waste a lot of raw materials. It could be coming from HR, as somebody indicated. Probably the right people were not recruited, or the company doesn't engage in performance appraisal to see how well employees are performing. Okay, it could be coming from finance and accounting. They didn't do the right capital analysis. Okay, we have what is known as project appraisals. Before you get into any project, they should have done some analysis and find out the returns, how much are we likely to get. And if it is only when we get positive we'll get positive returns that we should engage in that project. And the project could be, say, coming out with a new product and so on and so forth. Okay, so as a manager, this skill says you have to be able to think through issues, know how issues connect with each other. Otherwise, you may be dealing or trying to solve the problem by dealing with the wrong symptom. Where in our example, Albert will go and just fire all the people in the marketing and sales department. But you may realize that the following year, the company will still be making losses. Why? Because you didn't think analytically to find out where the problem is coming from. Okay. Yes, marketing might have done their best. And here I'm not saying that it might not be marketing department. It could be marketing as well. But sometimes it may not be marketing. It may be other departments. And so as a manager, the analytical skills simply means that you need to be able to think deeper than what you see on the surface to find the root causes or think how things connect with each other. Okay. The same thing with anything, whether there is a strike or some conflict in the organization. Some employees always come to fight in the organization and so on and so forth, right? If you don't go deeper, you might relate it to some minor stuff. For all you know, they have some problem, family issues at home and so on and so forth. That is making them more like to fight or become very aggressive when they come to work and so on and so forth. Okay, so conceptual skills is another very important skill that a manager must have. The ability to think analytically and see how things connect with each other in an organization is very, very important. So analytical skills enable managers to break down problems into smaller parts, to see the relations among the parts, and to recognize the implication of any one problem for the others. The higher the management level, the more important conceptual skills become. So if you find yourself at a higher level of management, conceptual skill is something that you must always have, okay, in larger proportions, because that place is about solving problems or thinking analytically to be able to deal with challenges of your organization. Okay. Let's look at, so those are, up to that point, you will get to know the attributes that you must have, the roles that you have to be playing, the functions that you will play as a manager, and then the skills that you must have in order to play those roles very well. Okay. So under the skills, we said there are 3. You need thinker skills, you need human skills, then you need conceptual skills. Very, very important. Okay. Characteristics of management. So we'll just run through them because of time. So management is organized activities. So we have some set of activities or functions that come together to make up management. We just saw 4 of them. We saw planning, organizing, leading, controlling. All right. So if you're into management, these core activities are things that you'll be engaged in. Management is aligned with organizational objectives. We don't just manage in vacuum. Normally, you manage because you want to achieve some objectives in your organization. So the functions of management is not done in abstract. Normally, it should be connected to the organizational objectives. Management optimizes constraining resources. That is what we saw in the definition. All of the things that we've said is just to prevent waste of resources and making best use of the resources of the organization. That is why you have to plan, you have to organize, you have to lead, you have to control. Okay. Management works with and through people. I explained this earlier. Very, very important. Working with people is that you don't sit in your air-conditioned room without getting involved. Okay. And working through people also means that as a manager, you shouldn't be doing everything. Okay. Some people, they love the work so much, say that when they even become the leaders or supervisors, they still want to do the work. No, that is not also the best way to manage. All right. You have to know that management involves delegation. Management involves leading. Leading means you are not the one doing it. You are rather supervising or encouraging others to get the work done. All right. So you need a fine balance to be with the people and at the same time working through people. Okay. And I need to emphasize this point. The fact that you work so hard in the organization doesn't make you a good manager. If you become a manager, you need to know how to work through other people. Otherwise, you will not be functioning well as a manager. So it's a blend of working with and through people. All right. Working with people most of the time, if it is at the lower level, there should be times that you come to the floor of the shop or the manufacturing place to just observe how things are going, right? Just to have a chit-chat conversation with your subordinates. Even though you are not doing the actual work, they feel you are with them. Okay. And there are critical moments. For example, if there is some order that must be met and they have to work overtime and all that, nothing prevents you from actually assisting them and working with them to meet those orders. Okay. So these are rare occasions that you have to get involved with work in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. Okay. Either way, we want to be careful. If you work too much without playing that leadership supervision role, you are not a good manager. If you also leave everything to them and you are always at your air-conditioned office, looking, chatting, or on the internet browsing and so on and so forth, that is not also the good trait of a manager. Okay. Management is about decision making. Very, very, very important. If you're a manager and you can't take decisions, then you are not a good manager. And here it is really about the unpalatable or difficult decisions where somebody's performance is not good and the person must be fired. As a good manager, you must be able to make that decision. If somebody is not competent at one place and need to be transferred, as a good manager, you must be capable of making those decisions. Okay, so decision making is not about the sweet ones, but when the decisions are tough, good managers must be capable of making these decisions for the well-being and welfare and the growth and profitability of their organizations. Okay. Management is a science as well as an art. I think we'll be looking at this in detail, but basically what it means is that if you study management, it has a body of knowledge and principles govern it, but it's also called for your personal creativity and the ability to implement the knowledge that you have acquired. So it's not just about the acquisition of knowledge as we're doing right now, but you must also be creative in terms of utilizing the knowledge you've acquired from textbooks, from lectures to your actual workplace. So it is both a science and also an art. Management is universal. What it means is that the principles, we've discussed this already, the principles are applicable in all organizations. Okay, what we said, planning, organizing, leading, controlling, every organization. If you are at the hospital, you will need that. If you find yourself in a manufacturing firm, you need that. If it is an educational institution, you need that. If it is hospitality, you need that. Every organization requires the functions or the roles played by a manager. Okay. And this is very, very important because you'll notice that for most organizations, especially the technical ones, they normally promote the technical people to the point of becoming managers when they don't even know anything about management. Okay. So if you pick the medical profession, most of the medical doctors become the directors of whatever, or the head of certain units. All the person know all of his life is about medicine. Okay. So it becomes a problem. knowing how to manage people becomes very difficult because they are technical people. They only know how to deal with medical issues and so on and so forth. All right. But management is universal. So everybody at all, no matter the profession, will require some knowledge in management to be a very effective manager. The management is intangible. What that means is that it is about the rules and functions of management, and it's not about the person. Okay, so most of the time to understand this, yes, even the recent case involving the IGP, you've heard debate that it is about the office of the IGP and not the IGP of the as a person. I won't go into the details because it's something that we all know, but I just want you to see the distinction. So the office is about the activity or the roles that goes on in the managerial role and not the person. The person can either be transferred, can leave the organization, and so on and so forth. So it is not the person. It is basically the roles of management that are performed, the functions of management that are performed. And that is why management is seen to be intangible, because you cannot find it in the person. Management is found in the roles that are played by managers and the functions that are played by managers. Okay, management is also interdisciplinary. What it means is that if you're a good manager, you don't necessarily have to be, say, a finance person or HR person or marketing person and so on and so forth, because you'll need an aggregation of all of this to be a good manager. So as a good manager, you don't have to know everything about accounting or something, but you need to know, have a fair idea of what accounting is, what the roles of accountants are, and how to get them involved in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. You need to know, have an idea of marketing and how to bring the marketing department on board. Okay, so it's interdisciplinary because you need a better appreciation of all the other functional areas in order to be able to manage properly. Okay, so if you were, and here is required normally at the first degree level. If you are the School of Business, normal level 100, 200, we try to expose you to all of the functional areas. Okay, so you will have done marketing, you'll do accounting, you'll do what again, HR, you do marketing. So you can't get out of School of Business without an appreciation of all of these areas. Okay, so as a manager, that's what it is, because if you are managing, you have to know what is going on with production, you have to know what's going on with HR. But as I said, it doesn't mean you have to be a specialist. Otherwise, you spend all your life going to school. Okay, after you've done HR, you're going to do production, you're going to do finance. No, that is not what we mean. But you need to have an appreciation of what goes on so that you can know when to bring on board marketing, when to call on production, when to call on finance, and so on and so forth. Okay. Management is a social process, all right? In all of our discussions, you kept this point about how to relate with people came up severally, working through people. Some were interpersonal role, how to relate with people. Under the skills, we saw human skills, all right? So management is about working with people and through people. So it's a social process. It's not something you just sit and impose on people. You need to get people involved in order to be an effective manager, okay? Management is a system of authority. That is also very important. So if you don't have authority to command and exact obedience, you will not be able to manage people, okay? As I indicated much earlier, human beings naturally, we are lazy and we don't like people who put pressure on us to work, all right? So if you don't have any system of authority backing you as a manager, it will be very, very difficult to get the best out of people. So it's also a system of authority in order to influence other people to achieve your goals as an organization. Management is dynamic. What it basically means is that the principles may sound the same, but how the extent to which they are executed could vary. We saw that much earlier. depend upon the level of manager that you are or the type of organization that you are. Some organizations could pay more emphasis on planning, others will pay more emphasis on controlling, okay? If you are in, say, a regulatory organization like FDA, most of their things will be how to monitor and make sure that people are doing the right things and so on and so forth. So management is dynamic. The functions and the role, their emphasis could differ based on the levels of management or the type of organization that you find yourself. Management principles are relative and not absolute, the same idea. Okay, so the principles are not absolute. What it means is that they could vary depending upon the organization or the structure within which you find yourself. And very soon in lecture 2, we'll be looking at the theories, and this point will come up again. Okay, so you realize that one principle at one point will almost counter another principle, and you have to know the context under which to apply what type of principle. So management principles are relative and not absolute. The management is a profession. Later we'll look at that, I think, in the next slide or so. What it means is that it contains some body of knowledge that you can learn and function well. So I give you the example of medical, doctors, or any other profession, engineers. They just rise, and based on the fact that they are doctors, they become directors and so on and so forth. And most of the time, they struggle with the managerial role because they have no idea what management is about. So it's a body of knowledge that can be learned and so on and so forth. Okay, management is a strategic function, so it falls within both operational and strategic. Operational, normally when you find yourself at the lower level. Operational means the day-to-day stuff. You have to coach employees to get things done, but it's also strategic when you find yourself at the top level, where you have to determine the long-term direction, the long-term vision, the long-term goals and objectives of the organization. All right. Okay, so let's look at this one. Management, is it a science or an art? I've explained this point already. So when we say something is a science, what it means is that it has some body of knowledge and principles, such that if you were to follow, you expect a particular result. Okay. However, management is not an exact science, as in physical sciences. In physical science, you did some core science, right? What is the test for finding or knowing that there is glucose in bread? I think it's a common test that we do in secondary school. Unless you guys didn't attend any secondary school, they just jumped you to the university. The test of finding out if there is glucose in bread or carbohydrate in bread. Regina, did you attend?
Did you did science? Because
No, I'm talking about core science.
yes, Prof. Oh, okay. But no, please,
You
I've
didn't read
attended
core
back.
science.
It's like I forgot it small. I did, but it's like I forgot small.
Agosia, what did you learn? The test for glucose in bread. But do you remember you did that thing in class?
Yes, you remember.
They said if you do something, you get something. Fozia, did you attend secondary school at all?
I did.
What was the test for glucose?
I did.
You said?
Hey, so that was the pastor for that too. We don't remember.
Okay. Was it you adding iodine or something to the bread? And the color, was it iodine? The color would change to blue, black. Do you guys remember?
No.
Hey,
We
see.
passed and we
So
forgot.
that's test for iodine. You add something to a paper, then it turns blue, black, or something.
Yes,
It is blue,
something.
black, or pink.
Good.
Yeah.
Who is talking? Yes, something like that. You Wait, who just gave that answer?
Akusia.
Evelyn. Is that Akusia?
Yes, sir.
Your school is winning the Brilliant Science and Math quiz this year. The rest of your school will win. Okay, let's move on. So yes, so in I brought it up because in physical sciences, you can actually go to the lab and really test and get concrete answers. Okay, that is not the type of science that we're dealing with. In the humanities, we can talk about cause and effect, as in we can say for a certainty that A causes B to happen. Okay, but we have a fair idea that A has the ability to influence B. Okay, so that is the difference. So management relies on some body of principles, and it is hoped that if you go by those principles, you'll be able to achieve certain objectives. All right. So as for physical sciences, you need some 99% exact answer to be able to say that, yes, this A causes B. In humanities and social sciences, we can't get those certainties, but we can have a fair idea that if we were to follow certain principles and this knowledge, it is possible that you will be able to improve, say, the performance of your organization. Okay, so we had some functions, we've learned some functions of management. We've learned certain skills that you need to have as a manager. We've learned certain roles. So just even with this, we can say that if you apply whatever you've learned so far, then it should help you to be able to manage your company well, and probably that will lead to good or better profits for your organization. All right. So that makes it a science. All right. Then the art aspect I've explained also. So if we say something is an art, most of the time, secondary school arts students, what do? Yes, I want the response. Arts, those who read arts, what do?
Geography, economics.
Geography, economics. Are you sure? Are they?
Arts.
Yeah. Geography, economics, and what
Arts.
again? History.
Elective
Government.
maths.
Government, elective maths, geography, and
No, but those who
economics.
do the drawing, what do they call them? Or
Visual
literature.
arts. Visual
Good.
arts.
Good. I was thinking about visual arts people more. Okay. So what is the trait? The traits for those type of courses, visual arts. What kind of traits do they have? Yes.
They do fabrics and in ceramics works.
So
Yes.
what traits should you have to be able to function well in visual arts program?
You should have a skill or something, maybe a talent, or you should have something like that.
Creative.
So you have to be creative. You should be creative. That's the word I'm looking for.
Innovative.
What again? You have to be innovative.
Innovative.
What again?
Yes.
Dynamic. Innovative.
Dynamic.
A skill of drawing.
You are giving me synonyms, eh? Okay. Yes, but that is the idea, because you see, it calls for some personal flair and ingenuity. Okay. So it calls for some personal involvement. You must have some personal flair to be a good person in the visual arts. All right. So that is the idea within the context of an art, because it calls for you practicing what you've learned. And the practice is not so much, you can know it, but bringing it to reality in terms of practice will call for your personal initiative. Okay. So we will have learned all these principles. Now you know that as a good manager, you need interpersonal skills. But I can bet you that most of you go to the workplace tomorrow and still shout at your employees, okay? Or your subordinates or your colleagues and so on and so forth, depending upon where you find yourself. Or even the way Evelyn will go about it will be different from the way Regina will go about it. Their personal traits is likely to influence how they will try to relate with other people within their organization. Okay, so that is the dimension of an art. Doing something implies a skill acquired through repeated effort. So you have to keep at it in order to perfect the practice. The fact that we've learned and you have the knowledge about it, doesn't mean you can easily get to know it, because your personal effort and involvement is key in order to implement the principles of management. Are we fine? Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right. Then the last, I hope so, is management as a profession. So basically, we're saying that, yes, a profession has the following attributes, and with the exception of one, management has all of them. So if you call something a profession, it involves a systematic body of knowledge, and management has that. There are things that you can learn that together will make you a good manager, and that is the systematic body of knowledge. A profession must call for has the need for learning and proper organization. If you're learning or whatever to be a good manager, you can learn that. You can enroll in a school to learn about management, just as you guys are doing. Okay. The only thing is that currently management doesn't have is the third one. For a profession, it requires an entry restricted on the basis of examination or education. So if you take, say, ICA Ghana or Ghana Bar Association, or all of those, I'm sure pharmacists will also have, most of the medical profession, doctors, you have to write some exams and pass before, okay, you can become a member of that particular profession. But management is not like that, all right? How can you ask somebody who has created his own business to go and write an exam before he can come back and manage his company? No. Okay, so with the three, currently management doesn't restrict access, all right? But all the other three are things that if management calls for. So the fourth one says dominance of the service motive over the profit motive. So basically for every profession, the main reason for the profession will be how to serve the needs of people, much more than making profit or making money out of that. And generally, if you even want to start a business, that should be the reason why you want to go into business. You should have identified some needs that you want to serve society with, and not just because you want to make profit, okay? I've done some video on the wrong reasons why people get into entrepreneurship. It's on my YouTube channel, and if you may want to listen to it, right? So you shouldn't just start with a motive, and that is how professions are. The reason is not to make money, but to serve people. In the course of serving humanities well, the money will come, but you don't start with that. And that is one of the traits of a profession. So if you're a manager also, that should be your attitude. The attitude should be to help people and serve people better, and not just about making money or profits. Okay. So let's just run through this. I think we've spent a lot of time on this topic. So management is important due to the following reasons. It optimizes use of scarce resources. We've explained that. It ensures effective leadership and motivation. Yes, we've talked about that. It promotes harmony among industrial relations. We say one of the role of a manager is disturbance handler. Okay, when there's confusion, you should be able to deal with that. It facilitates the achievement of goals. We said the planning process, you set goals, you also establish the tactics or strategies for the attainment of these goals. It facilitates change and growth. Yes, we spoke about the fact that one of the roles of a manager is to act as an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs must suggest change and growth to their organizations. It enhances the quality of life. Once you put in the right structures, you'll be able to serve people better in terms of the product and service that you render to them. And that will enhance the quality of life of people. It improves productivity. If you remember our discussions on leadership, you need a leader to motivate, to encourage, to put pressure for people to be productive. So management will bring about productivity. It contributes to organizational competitiveness. All the functions of management, if employed well, will improve the organizational competitiveness. It develops professionalism, all right? So this knowledge that you are acquiring from this program, the hope is that you will become more professional in your dealings with your customers and your colleagues and so on and so forth. It contributes to organizational growth. So these are some of the significance of management. All right. Any questions so far? Any questions?